What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Cars, Cost, and Technology, and you're watching the Car Shopping Series, episode number 2. For those of you new to the channel or new to the series, I recently sold my C6 Corvette, and I'm just putting together a quick series of short videos going over the different cars that I've considered as a replacement for my Corvette, just trying to help me make the best decision by getting some viewer feedback and also recording each one of the cars with the pros and cons laid out for me. Help me make that overall decision. But just so you know, the criteria I'm looking for my next car, I want some type of performance car or sports car. I'd like the price to be $60,000 or less, and a couple other smaller criteria, but those are the two important ones. Last episode, I reviewed the 2017 Corvette Stingray and just weighed some of the pros and cons of that car. Not very much feedback on that, so hopefully this video will get a little more feedback, but definitely looking for some help from viewers. I know all the fans out there in the automotive industry have a lot of knowledge and information to offer on what's a good deal right now, what are some good options, so hoping to get some feedback on this video. But anyway, let's jump into contender number 2. So here it is, guys. Here's option number 2 on the list of cars I'm considering as a replacement. This is the Shelby GT350 2017 year model. I wanted to go over a couple pros and cons of the car, as well as go over some performance data with you. But just to start out with pros, I think this is a really sleek looking car. I did use the build your own Mustang tool on Ford's website. I will put a link in the description to check that out as well. I'll definitely recommend you play around on that. It's got a lot of cool options. But you can see went with the black on black, similar to the design scheme I used with the Corvette I put together, but I just think it's a really nice look. As far as some benefits to this car, obviously it's going to be a good value. You know, I think anything in the Mustang lineup or built by Ford in general, they're pretty reasonable with their pricing. So obviously you're getting a lot of horsepower, which we will go over here in a moment, but you're getting a lot of performance for the price. And a really good looking car. I love what Ford's done with the most current generation Mustang, and then on top of that, the Shelby GT350 has just a few nice accents to make it look even better. But I think they did a really good job of keeping it reasonable. It doesn't look, outrageous or tacky, but still really sleek looking. So I love the looks. Really like the performance from all the data that I've read. It's a really well performing car. Got a lot of cool features as well. I really like the flat plane crank V8. I think that is sort of unique in its class. It's very high revving and has a very unique exhaust note that you can't really find on many other vehicles. So I'm definitely a fan of that. I think that's a huge pro for me. I love the sound of a good V8, and definitely love the high revving engines. I'm a huge fan of some of the exotics, like the Ferraris and Lamborghinis that rev so much higher than most of the American V8s. So I like that they went with that feature, and you can get a little more of a unique exhaust note out of a similar or familiar muscle car. So I think that's a really cool feature. As far as some of the cons, from what I've read, this car is really hard to get your hands on right now. It seems like their dealers aren't getting quite the allocation that they need, and people are reselling them on the used market for a huge markup. So that would be my only concern if this were, say to be my final decision and want to go forward with this car. I would hate to have to compromise on what type I got, or go above my budget just to get my hands on one because the dealership marked it up over the sticker price. But I will cover the summary with you from online on the Ford website. But as far as the actual sticker price goes, you can get a model just like this for under $60,000. So as far as what they're actually going to charge you all said and done, that's the only variable that I haven't been able to 100% figure out yet. But I have read that's a big concern and an issue right now is availability. I also did do some research on the GT350R. That looks like a really, really nice car, but I think it's just a little too track oriented for me. I would be using this car for a little more than just a track weapon. I would want to drive it to dinner with my wife and meet friends with it, things like that. So I like having the luxuries of AC and a radio, some of the basic stuff that they've stripped out of the 350R for performance reasons. But overall, I think it's a really nice car. Really like the styling, love the performance. Think it's a great value, but like I said, as far as availability goes, it's one of my concerns. But anyway, let's jump into some performance data. So here's some of the basics as far as performance goes. Of course, there's a lot more that goes into performance as a whole, but you can't help but at least check out the horsepower, torque, 0 to 60 times, weight. And one thing I've been doing with all the cars that I've considered purchasing is looking at the cost per horsepower number. And this car has a really low cost per horsepower, just over $100 per horsepower. And I think that's pretty hard to beat. I think maybe the Hellcat is going to be close to that or lower, but other than that, for a new vehicle, pretty hard to beat that number. But you can see the 0 to 60 time really good at 4.3 seconds. I think that would be lower if it wasn't for the weight. You know, almost 3,800 pounds. That's on the heavy side for a car like this, or you know, performance car. But the 526 horsepower makes up for it. I thought it was kind of interesting how the 429 foot-pounds of torque. Normally, especially with V8s, you see closer figures between the horsepower and torque, but I think that the way that flat plane crank V8 works, there's pretty significant differences in how it makes power from a normal V8 that you're more used to seeing in, say, a Mustang or Camaro or Corvette, something along those lines. But either way, you know, really impressive here. I think that I would be satisfied with it. Like to see the 0 to 60 time a little bit lower, but you know, I definitely wouldn't have any complaints about that. I know my C6 Corvette was somewhere in that range. I'd say in the mid fours, and never had any complaints about the speed or performance. So here's my summary from Ford.com showing the build that I put together. Of course, I went pretty basic, nothing too fancy. Obviously, trying to keep it underneath that $60,000 price range, but I was pretty surprised overall that you could actually get this model for, you know, in that neighborhood. I guess it's because of all the hype around it and all the markup in between dealers and the used market. I just for some reason was under the impression it was more expensive than that, but you can see here base MSRP under $55,000, all said and done, you know, still under $60,000. So of course there's a lot more options that could bring this car way up over that price, but it's still cool to know that at least sticker price you could get a car like this for under $60,000. So I think the biggest thing for me at this point, if I were to want to move forward with this model, is just do some more research on availability. Like I said, I definitely wouldn't want to pay a huge premium or markup at a dealership, or get stuck with a you know, really bad deal on a used car just so I could get one. I like the car, but I don't think I would be willing to go over you know, my price cap of $60,000 to get one. So I think that'd be the biggest problem with going forward with this model. But overall, I had fun, you know, building one online, pricing it out. Love to see if I could find one for around sticker price, or maybe even get it lower than sticker price. Before I wrap up the video, I wanted to do a quick explanation on the thumbnail of this video. This photo is actually a picture I took in person of a Shelby GT350 I saw at a car show. This is my first time seeing it in person, and man, I really have to tell you, these pictures in the video and any other pictures you may have seen online, it just doesn't do the car justice. When you see it in person, it's so aggressive, and it really does look just that much better than a standard Mustang GT, or you know, probably seen a lot of the EcoBoost driving around, but they just did a great job designing it. I really like this color scheme. I don't think I'd do it for me personally. I prefer the black on black that I put together online, but it's, you know, still a really classic looking design. But I really enjoyed seeing this car at the car show. Wanted to use it as my thumbnail, especially considering I was going over possibly, you know, the pros and cons of purchasing this car. But anyway, just wanted to explain where that thumbnail came from. Alright guys, well that brings us to the end of this episode of the car shopping series. Hope you enjoyed it. Of course, all the photos I put together in this video came from Ford.com using the Build Your Own Mustang tool, so I'll put a link in the description if you want to check that out. Try build one of your own. Pretty cool tool if you want to try to build it exactly how you'd like the car and see what the price would land at. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the car shopping series so far. If you haven't checked out some of my other content, be sure to look through my channel, like and subscribe if you're interested. Try to put out some more episodes, and like I mentioned before, definitely looking for some feedback on these videos. I'm doing this as much for me as I am for the channel itself. I really want to get some feedback from some car experts out there who might have some advice to offer on what's a good buy right now, what's not a good buy, what I overlooked on these cars that I'm put together on these videos, or maybe something, another car model that's a good option. So definitely looking for some good feedback. It's always appreciated. But anyway, thanks again, guys. Have a great day.